The ship was dying. Commander Elena Vasquez could hear it in the screaming metal, feel it in the way the floor shook beneath her feet. Warning lights flashed red across every screen. The computer voice kept repeating the same words over and over. Hull breach. Engine failure. Impact in 3 minutes. She was the only one left alive. The rest of her crew had died when the asteroid struck. Captain Morrison, Dr. Chun, engineers, Kowalski and Patel, all of them gone in a single moment of terrible silence before the alarm started. Elena had been in the cargo bay when it happened. The emergency doors had sealed automatically, trapping her in the one section of the ship that still had air dot. Now she was falling. The planet below her was called Kethvora Prime. She knew this because she had studied the star maps before the mission. She also knew that no human was allowed to land there. The Galactic Concord, the great alliance of alien species that ruled this part of the galaxy, had declared the planet off limits to everyone. It was a sanctuary, a protected world, the last home of creatures called void dragons. Elena did not care about rules right now. She cared about surviving. She strapped herself into the emergency seat and pulled the harness tight across her chest. The ship hit the atmosphere and everything turned to fire. Through the small window, she could see flames licking at the hull. The heat was incredible. Sweat poured down her face and her hands shook as she gripped the armrests. The impact came like a giant's fist. Elena's head snapped forward and then back. Pain exploded through her body. The world spun and twisted and then finally, mercifully, went still. She woke up to silence. For a long moment, she just lay there, breathing. Her ribs hurt. Her left arm hurt. Everything hurt. But she was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she was alive. Elena unbuckled the harness and fell to the floor. The ship was tilted at a strange angle, half buried in something. She crawled toward the emergency hatch and pushed it open. Cold air rushed in, carrying a strange smell like lightning and old stone. Outside, she found a cave. The ship had crashed through the ceiling and landed in a massive underground chamber. Crystals grew from the walls, glowing with soft blue light. The floor was covered in fine sand that sparkled like crushed diamonds. Elena pulled herself out of the wreckage and looked around. She needed to find shelter. She needed to find water. She needed to send a distress signal and hope that someone would come for her. But first, she needed to stop the bleeding from the cut on her forehead. She limped back into the ship and found the medical kit. Her fingers were clumsy as she cleaned the wound and applied the healing gel. The emergency beacon was destroyed, crushed in the impact. The communication system was dead. She was alone on a forbidden planet with no way to call for help. Elena gathered what supplies she could find. Food packets, water containers, a thermal blanket, a small flashlight. She stuffed everything into a bag and headed deeper into the cave, looking for a place to rest. That was when she found the egg dot. It was tucked into a small hollow in the cave wall, half buried in the crystal sand. The shell was black, darker than anything Elena had ever seen, but it was covered in thin lines that glowed like distant stars. It was beautiful. It was also very, very cold. Elena touched it carefully. The shell felt like ice against her fingers. She looked around for the mother, for any sign of the creature that had laid this egg, but she saw nothing. The cave was empty. The egg was alone. She knew she should leave it. She knew that touching anything on this planet was against Concord law. But the egg was so cold. Something inside her, some deep human instinct, could not walk away from a dying thing. Elena picked up the egg. It was heavier than she expected, about the size of a football. She carried it back to the small camp she had made near the ship and wrapped her thermal blanket around it. Then she held it against her chest, sharing her body heat with whatever was inside. The first night was the hardest. The temperature dropped so low that Elena could see her breath forming clouds in the air. She shivered constantly, but she did not let go of the egg. She talked to it sometimes, just to hear a voice in the darkness. She told it about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, about her mother's garden and her father's terrible cooking, about the dog she had as a child, a golden retriever named Sunny who used to sleep at the foot of her bed. The second night, she sang old songs from her childhood, lullabies that her grandmother used to sing. Her voice echoed strangely in the crystal cave, and she thought she felt something move inside the egg. The third night, she was too weak to sing. She had eaten the last of her food. Her water was almost gone. She knew that if rescue did not come soon, she would die here in this cave, holding an egg that might already be dead. She closed her eyes and pressed her cheek against the shell. On the fourth morning, Elena woke to a sound, a small crack like ice breaking on a winter pond. She looked down and saw a thin line spreading across the surface of the egg. Then another. Then another. The shell split open. A creature tumbled out into her lap. It was small, no bigger than a house cat. Its scales were black like the shell, but they seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow. Its wings were folded tight against its body, thin and delicate as paper. And its eyes, when it opened them, were like looking into space itself, deep and endless, filled with swirling colors that might have been galaxies. The creature looked up at Elena. It tilted its head to one side, studying her with those impossible eyes. Then it made a sound. A soft chirp, almost like a question. Elena laughed. It hurt her broken ribs, but she could not help it. She laughed and cried at the same time, tears running down her dirty face. "Hello," she whispered. "Hello, little one." The creature chirped again and climbed up her arm. It settled on her shoulder and wrapped its tail around her neck. Not tight, just enough to hold on. Then it tucked its head under her chin and let out a small sigh. Elena felt something then, something strange and warm that spread through her chest. It was like the creature had reached inside her and found a place to belong. She did not understand what had happened. She did not know that void dragons were supposed to be dangerous, solitary creatures that killed anything that approached. She did not know that no void dragon had bonded with another being in over 400 years. All she knew was that she was no longer alone. "Orion," she said softly, looking up at the glowing crystals that looked like stars. "I'm going to call you Orion." The little dragon chirped in approval and closed its galaxy eyes. Together, they waited for rescue. The rescue ships came on the 11th day. Elena heard them before she saw them. A deep humming sound that made the crystals in the cave vibrate and sing. She was sitting near the entrance of the cave, too weak to move very far. Orion was curled around her shoulders like a living scarf. He had not left her side since he hatched. The ships were silver and shaped like teardrops. They landed in the valley outside the cave, and soon Elena could hear voices and footsteps coming closer. Alien voices speaking in languages she did not understand. A team of Concord officials found her. They were tall beings with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore white uniforms and carried medical equipment. When they saw Elena, they stopped and stared. But they were not looking at her. They were looking at Orion. "That is impossible," one of them said. He spoke the common trade language that most species used. "That is a void dragon hatchling." Orion lifted his head and watched them with his galaxy eyes. His tail tightened slightly around Elena's neck. Not enough to hurt. Just enough to say that he was not happy about these strangers. "He hatched 4 days ago," Elena said. Her voice was rough from thirst. "His egg was abandoned. I kept it warm." The officials looked at each other. Their faces were hard to read, but Elena thought she saw fear. Maybe wonder. Maybe both. They took her to their ship and gave her food and water and medicine for her injuries. A doctor wrapped her broken ribs and treated her cuts and bruises. The whole time, Orion stayed on her shoulders. He hissed at anyone who came too close. Elena learned many things in those first few hours. She learned that void dragons were the most ancient and powerful creatures in the known galaxy. Some species thought they were gods. They could grow to be larger than starships. They could fold space with their wings and breathe fire that burned hotter than stars. They lived for thousands of years and remembered the birth of civilizations. She also learned that void dragons did not bond. They were solitary creatures who wanted nothing to do with other beings. The last time a void dragon had hatched, over 400 years ago, the hatchling had killed every scientist who tried to approach it, but Orion would not leave Elena's side. When she slept, he slept. When she ate, he ate from her hand. When she spoke, he tilted his head and listened as if he understood every word. The Concord officials did not know what to do. They brought her to a large station that orbited the planet. The station was full of scientists and politicians and military officers, all of them wanting to see the human who had somehow bonded with a void dragon. Elena answered their questions as best as she could. Yes, she had found the egg alone. No, she had not done anything special. She had just kept it warm. 3 days after the rescue, the High Council made their decision. Elena was in her small room on the station when they came for her. Orion was sleeping on the bed, his small body rising and falling with each breath. She was watching him and thinking about how strange her life had become. The door opened. 12 soldiers walked in, wearing heavy armor that covered them from head to toe. Behind them came a tall alien with silver skin and cold eyes. "Commander Vasquez," the alien said. "I am Council Representative Vethener. You are hereby charged with interference with a protected species. The hatchling will be taken to the Kethvoran Dragon Sanctuary for rehabilitation." Elena stood up. "What? You have contaminated the creature's development," Vethener said. His voice held no emotion. "Void dragons do not bond. This unnatural attachment must be corrected. The hatchling will be separated from you and taught to behave as a proper void dragon should." "No." Elena stepped in front of the bed. "You can't take him. He chose me. He needs me." Vethener made a small gesture. 2 of the soldiers stepped forward, carrying a device that looked like a metal collar. "Please do not resist," Vethener said. "It will only make this more difficult." They put the collar around Elena's neck. When one of the soldiers pressed a button, her whole body went stiff. She could not move. She could not even speak. The neural dampener had frozen her in place like a statue, but she could still see. She could still hear. Orion woke up. He saw Elena standing frozen and the soldiers approaching him, and he began to scream. It was not a sound that Elena had heard before. It was high and sharp and filled with terror. He spread his small wings and breathed fire at the soldiers, but the flames were weak. He was just a baby. He could not hurt them. They caught him in a containment sphere, a ball of energy that trapped him inside and muffled his screams. Elena watched as they carried him away. Tears ran down her frozen face. The last thing she saw was Orion pressing his small body against the wall of the sphere, reaching toward her with one tiny clawed hand. His galaxy eyes were full of fear and confusion and something else. Something that looked like heartbreak. Then the door closed and he was gone. When the neural dampener finally released her, Elena fell to her knees. She screamed until her voice broke. She pounded her fists against the floor until her knuckles bled. The guards outside her door did not come in. They just listened and said nothing. For 3 days, Elena did not eat. She did not sleep. She sat in the corner of her room and stared at the wall. The Concord officials came and explained their decision. They told her that it was for the best. The hatchling would be happier with his own kind. He would learn to be a proper void dragon. In time, he would forget about the human who had kept him warm. Elena did not believe them. She knew, with a certainty that went deeper than words, that Orion would not forget. She had felt something when he hatched. A connection. A bond. It was not something that could be broken by distance or time, or the decisions of politicians who did not understand. On the fourth day, a guard came to tell her that her tribunal had been scheduled. She would face charges for her crimes against the protected species. The punishment could be imprisonment. It could be exile. It could be worse. Elena looked up at the guard. Her eyes were red from crying, and her voice was rough, but there was something in her face that made the guard step back. "I need to know something," Elena said. "The hatchling, Orion, is he all right?" The guard hesitated. Elena could see that he wanted to say something, but he was afraid. "Please," Elena said. "I just need to know if he's okay." The guard looked at the door. Then he looked back at Elena. "He's not eating," he said quietly. "He is not sleeping. The scientists do not know what is wrong with him." He paused. "They say he just sits in the corner of his enclosure and stares at the door, like he is waiting for something." Elena closed her eyes. "Or someone," the guard added. Then he left. And Elena was alone with her fear and her guilt and her desperate, burning hope that somehow, someway, she would find a path back to the little dragon who had chosen her. She did not know how. She did not know when, but she knew that she would not stop trying. Not until Orion was back in her arms. Not until he was safe. That was what humans did. They did not give up on the ones they loved. Not ever. The Kethvoran Dragon Sanctuary was the most advanced facility of its kind in the entire galaxy. It covered an area larger than most cities. It had climate-controlled enclosures that could copy any environment. It had teams of scientists who had spent their whole lives studying void dragons. It had everything a young dragon could ever need. Orion wanted none of it. Dr. Thesa Kell was the head scientist at the sanctuary. She had studied void dragons for over 60 years. She had seen hatchlings before, though not many. She knew their behaviors, their needs, their patterns. She thought she understood them, but she did not understand Orion. The hatchling had been placed in the finest enclosure in the facility. The temperature was perfect. The lighting copied the soft glow of the crystal caves where void dragons were born. There was food waiting for him, carefully prepared meat that had been tested and approved by the best xenobiologists in the Concord. Orion did not touch it. He sat in the corner of his enclosure, as far from the door as he could get. His small body was curled into a tight ball. His wings were wrapped around himself like a blanket. His galaxy eyes were fixed on the entrance. He did not move. He did not make a sound. He just waited. Dr. Kell tried everything she could think of. She adjusted the temperature. She changed the lighting. She brought in recordings of adult void dragon calls, hoping that the familiar sounds would comfort him. She even brought in other young dragons, distant cousins from related species, hoping that company would help. That was a mistake. When the other dragons approached, Orion attacked. He was small, barely larger than a cat, but he fought with a fury that shocked everyone watching. Fire and shadow poured from his small body. His claws and teeth found every gap in the other creature's scales. He drove them away screaming and bleeding. Then he returned to his corner and resumed his vigil. Dr. Kell watched the recording of the attack over and over. She had never seen anything like it. Void dragons were powerful, yes, but they were also calm, patient. They did not lose control like this. "He is protecting something," her assistant said. "Or waiting for something. Waiting for what?" Dr. Kell asked, but she already knew the answer. They all did. Days passed. Then weeks. Orion did not eat. The food they left for him rotted untouched. His body began to consume itself, breaking down muscle and fat to keep him alive. He grew thinner, weaker, but still he did not move from his corner. Still he did not sleep. That was the most troubling part. The sleep-void dragons needed sleep. Not like other creatures. For them, sleep was essential in a deeper way. Their bodies processed something called dark matter, an invisible energy that existed throughout the universe. This processing happened during sleep. Without it, their bodies would slowly destroy themselves. Orion had not slept since he arrived at the sanctuary. Dr. Cal tried sedatives. She used the most powerful drugs available, substances that could put a full-grown void dragon into hibernation. Orion's small body burned through them in minutes. His eyes would grow heavy, his head would start to droop, and then he would snap awake again, alert, watching, waiting. She tried neural suppressors, machines that could force the brain into a sleep state. Orion fought them. His mind pushed back against the artificial sleep with a strength that damaged the equipment. She tried everything in her considerable arsenal. Nothing worked. After 30 days, Dr. Cal called an emergency meeting with the High Council. "He is dying," she told them. Her voice was flat with exhaustion and something that might have been grief. His metabolic readings are failing. His dark matter levels are critical. If he does not sleep soon, his body will shut down completely. The council members looked at each other. Their faces showed concern, but also something else. Something cold. "Can you force sleep?" One of them asked. "I have tried. His resistance is beyond anything I have ever seen." Dr. Kell paused. "I believe the problem is psychological, not physical. His body is capable of sleep. His mind refuses it. Why?" Dr. Kell had thought about this question for many sleepless nights. She had reviewed all her research, all her experience, everything she knew about void dragons. And she had come to a conclusion that she did not want to share. Void dragons possess dark matter through dreams, she said slowly. But to dream, they must first surrender to sleep. And to surrender, they must trust. They must believe completely and absolutely that they are safe. She looked at the council members. Orion does not feel safe. He is in a strange place, surrounded by strangers, separated from the only being he has ever known. He cannot sleep because he is afraid. And he will not stop being afraid until she stopped. Until what? The council demanded. Until the human comes back. Silence fell over the room. Dr. Kell could see the council members struggling with this information. They had made their decision. They had separated the hatchling from the human for good reasons. The bond was unnatural. The human was a contamination. The dragon needed to be rehabilitated. But the dragon was dying. And the only cure was a creature they had locked away 6 star systems distant. "There must be another way," one council member said. "If there is, I have not found it." Dr. Kell felt very tired. "I have given my entire life to studying these creatures. I thought I understood them. But I have never seen a void dragon bond with another being. I did not think it was possible." She thought about Orion, alone in his enclosure, slowly fading away. She thought about the human woman who had held a dying egg against her chest and sung lullabies in the darkness. She thought about how strange and wonderful and terrible it all was. "The hatchling chose her," Dr. Kell said quietly. "I do not know why. I do not know how. But the bond is real, and it cannot be broken by distance or time or our decisions. We can keep them apart, but we cannot make him stop loving her." She stood up from her chair. "I am a scientist. I deal in facts and evidence. And the fact is this: if we do not return the human, the hatchling will die. That is not an opinion. That is not a theory. That is what the evidence tells us. She looked at each council member in turn. You brought me here to save him. I am telling you how. The choice is yours. Then she walked out of the room, leaving the council to argue among themselves. Back in his enclosure, Orion sat in his corner and watched the door. His body was failing. His mind was exhausted. Every instinct told him to close his eyes and rest, but he could not. Not yet. Not until she came back. He did not know if she would come. He did not know if she could. All he knew was that she had held him when he was cold, had sung to him when he was scared, had loved him when he was alone. She would come. He believed it with every part of his being, and until she did, he would wait. The detention center was cold and gray, and far from everything Elena loved. She had been there for 29 days. Each day felt longer than the last. Each night brought dreams of galaxy eyes and soft chirping sounds that faded when she woke. She was waiting for her trial. The Concord had charged her with interference with a protected species. The punishment could be years in prison. It could be permanent exile from Concord space. She did not care about any of it. She only cared about Orion. The guard who visited her was named Keth. He was a young alien with green scales and kind eyes. He was not supposed to talk to prisoners, but sometimes he did anyway. He told Elena about his homeworld, about his family, about the small garden he kept in his quarters. Elena liked him. He reminded her of the friends she had left behind on Earth. On the 30th day, Keth came to her cell with a strange look on his face. I have news, he said quietly. About the hatchling. Elena stood up so fast that she knocked over her chair. Is he okay? Is he alive? Keth looked at the floor. He is alive. But he is not okay. He paused. He is dying, Commander. He has not eaten or slept since they took him. The scientists have tried everything. Nothing works. Elena felt her heart crack open. Why? Because he is waiting for you. Keth looked up at her. His kind eyes were full of sadness. The head scientist believes he cannot sleep because he does not feel safe. And he will not feel safe until you are with him again. Elena grabbed the bars of her cell. Then let me go to him, please. I do not care about the trial. I do not care about prison. Just let me see him. I cannot. Keth's voice was heavy with regret. The council has forbidden it. They still believe the bond is unnatural. They still believe he can be rehabilitated. He shook his head. They are wrong. I know they are wrong. But I am just a guard. I do not have the power to change their minds. Elena sank to the floor. Tears ran down her face. He's going to die. He's going to die waiting for me, and I cannot do anything. Keth was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed everything. There are others who think like I do. Others who have worked with humans and know what you are capable of. They are not happy with the council's decision. He leaned closer to the bars. There is a supply shuttle that leaves tomorrow at dawn. The pilot is sympathetic. He could look the other way if a certain prisoner happened to escape. Elena stared at him. You would help me? You could lose your position. You could go to prison yourself. Keth smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was warmth in it. I have seen how you humans love. It is strange to us. You love things that are not like you. You love things that cannot love you back. You love even when it hurts. He touched the bars gently. I think that is beautiful. I think it is something the galaxy needs more of. He pressed a small object into her hand. A key card. Tomorrow at dawn, he said. Do not make me regret this. Then he walked away, and Elena was left holding the key to her freedom. The escape was not elegant. Elena had to crawl through maintenance tunnels and hide in cargo containers. She stole a shuttle from the docking bay and flew it through hyperspace jumps that pushed the small craft to its limits. The navigation computer screamed warnings at her. The hull groaned and cracked. Her old injuries flared with pain. She did not stop. She did not slow down. She thought of Orion, alone and afraid, dying because he loved her too much to give up hope. 3 jumps. 6 jumps. 9 jumps. The shuttle was falling apart around her. Smoke filled the cabin. The engines made sounds that engines should never make. On the 10th jump, the shuttle gave up entirely. Elena managed to aim it at the planet below before the controls died. She crashed into the northern continent of Kethvora Prime, bouncing across rocky ground until the shuttle finally came to rest against a cliff face. She climbed out with 3 broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a cut above her eye that would not stop bleeding. The sanctuary was 50 kilometers south. She started walking. It took her 6 hours. 6 hours of stumbling through alien forests, climbing over rocks, pushing through pain that made her want to scream. But she did not stop. She could not stop. Every step brought her closer to Orion. The sun was rising when she reached the sanctuary. Alarms were already sounding. They knew she had escaped. They knew she was coming. Elena did not try to hide. She walked straight up to the main entrance and pushed open the doors. Scientists and guards and officials all turned to stare at her. She was covered in blood and dirt. Her clothes were torn. She could barely stand. But her eyes were clear and her voice was steady. "Where is he?" Dr. Thesikel pushed through the crowd. She looked at Elena with wide eyes. "How did you get here? The security system should have... Where is he?" Something in Elena's voice made everyone fall silent. Dr. Kell hesitated for only a moment. Then she pointed down a long corridor. "Enclosure 7. But you should know, he's very weak." "He may not?" Elena was already running. She heard shouts behind her, heard footsteps following, but she did not care. She ran until she found the door marked 7. She pressed her face against the glass, and there he was. Orion was so thin. His scales had lost their shine. His wings hung limp against his body. He was curled in the corner of the enclosure, barely breathing, his galaxy eyes half closed. But when Elena appeared at the glass, those eyes opened. They focused on her face. And for a moment, time stopped. Then Orion lifted his head. His whole body trembled with the effort. He made a sound, a small chirp, that was barely louder than a whisper. It was the most beautiful thing Elena had ever heard. "Open the door," she said. No one moved. "Open the door." Dr. Cal stepped forward. Her hand was shaking as she pressed the control panel. The glass barrier slid open. Elena walked into the enclosure and knelt on the ground. Orion crossed the distance between them in a blur. He climbed her body and wrapped himself around her shoulders. His tail curled around her neck, his head tucked under her chin. And then, for the first time in 34 days, Orion closed his eyes. He was asleep in seconds. Deep, true sleep. The kind of sleep that heals. The kind of sleep that comes only when you feel completely safe. Elena held him and cried. She cried for all the days they had been apart. She cried for all the pain he had suffered. She cried because he had waited for her, even when waiting meant dying. The scientists watched in silence. Some of them had tears in their eyes too. Doctor Kel looked at the readings on her monitor. "His vitals are stabilizing," she said softly. "His dark matter levels are increasing. He's going to live." Elena pressed her cheek against Orion's sleeping head. "I came back," she whispered. "I will always come back. I promise." Orion stirred in his sleep and made a small sound. Not a chirp. Something softer. Something that might have been a word. Trust. And in that moment, everyone in the room understood something important. They understood that some bonds could not be broken. They understood that love was not a contamination but a gift. They understood that this small human woman had done something impossible, that she had earned the trust of a void dragon, and that changed everything. The tribunal was held 3 months later. Orion had recovered his strength, and his scales gleamed with health once more. He refused to leave Elena's shoulders, and the Concord had stopped trying to separate them. They had learned that lesson the hard way. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 100 different species, politicians, scientists, military commanders, journalists. Everyone wanted to see the human who had bonded with a void dragon. Everyone wanted to know what would happen to her. Elena stood at the center of the room with Orion wrapped around her shoulders. She was not afraid. Whatever they decided, she and Orion would face it together. Council Representative Vethner stood to speak. He was the same official who had ordered Orion taken from her all those months ago. His face was cold, and his voice was hard. Commander Elena Vasquez, you are charged with interference with a protected species, escape from custody, theft of a Concord vessel, and illegal entry into a sanctuary world. These are serious crimes. The council has convened to determine your punishment. A murmur ran through the crowd. Elena lifted her chin and said nothing. Orion's tail tightened slightly around her neck. Vethner opened his mouth to continue, and then the sky changed. Through the massive windows of the hall, everyone could see the stars. One moment they were distant points of light. The next moment, something blocked them out. Something huge. Something that folded space itself as it moved. A void dragon. A full-grown void dragon. It was larger than anything Elena had ever seen. Larger than the station. Larger than most moons. Its scales were black as the void between galaxies, and its eyes were twin supernovas that burned with ancient fire. The dragon pressed its massive head against the window. The glass should have shattered. The station should have been destroyed. But nothing happened. The dragon simply looked inside. It was looking at Elena. It was looking at Orion. Then it spoke. The voice did not come through speakers or communication devices. It came directly into the minds of everyone present. It was ancient and vast and terrible and beautiful. I am Kethmara. I am the Elder. I have watched stars die and civilizations rise and fall. I have not spoken to lesser species in 600 cycles. But I speak now. The council members were frozen in their seats. Some of them were crying without knowing why. The dragon's presence filled the room like water filling a vessel. You do not understand what has happened here, Kethmora said. You see contamination. We see recognition. You see interference. We see connection. The Elder's galaxy eyes focused on Orion. The small hatchling lifted his head and chirped at her. There was no fear in him. Only love. Our children do not bond, Kethmara continued. Our children have never bonded. For thousands of years, we believed this was simply our nature. We are too vast, too old, too different from the smaller beings that share our universe. We accepted our loneliness as the price of our power. Her gaze shifted to Elena. But this human did something we did not think possible. She found a dying egg in a frozen cave. She did not know what it was. She did not know that she was breaking laws. She only knew that it was cold and alone, and that she could help. The Elder's voice grew softer. She held that egg against her heart for 3 days and 3 nights. She shared her warmth when she had barely enough to keep herself alive. She sang to it. She talked to it. She loved it before it was even born. Elena felt tears running down her face. She did not try to wipe them away. When you took our child from her, she did not give up. She crossed 6 star systems with broken bones to reach him. She crashed on our sacred world and walked 50 kilometers through wilderness because she had made a promise. She had told him that she would come back. Kefmara looked at the council. There was something in her eyes that might have been pity. You asked why the hatchling could not sleep. The answer is simple. Void dragons must trust completely to surrender to sleep. We must believe, with every part of our being, that we are safe. My great-grandchild found the first being in his existence that he trusted that much. You took her away. Of course, he could not sleep. You had stolen the only safety he had ever known. The elder spread her wings. Even through the window, even at that impossible size, the motion made everyone in the room tremble. You will not separate them. You will not punish her. And you will update your records with a new classification. She looked at Elena one last time. Humans are not a contamination. They are what happens when a species evolves the capacity to love things that are not like them. They love without reason. They love without limit. They love even when it hurts. We did not think such a thing was possible. Orion chirped loudly and stretched his wings. Kefmara made a sound in response. It was the first time any of them had heard a void dragon laugh. Take care of him, little human. He chose well. Then she was gone. The stars returned. The presence faded. But nothing would ever be the same. The charges against Elena were dropped that day. She was given a special status, the first human to be recognized as a dragon keeper. She and Orion were allowed to go wherever they wanted, do whatever they wanted, be whatever they wanted to be. 20 years passed. Orion grew. He stretched nearly 100 meters long. His scales could drink in starlight, and his wings could fold space itself. He was the first void dragon in recorded history to allow other species on his back. He carried Elena everywhere, through nebulae and between galaxies, to worlds that the Concord had never mapped. She grew old on his shoulders, her hair turning silver, her face gaining lines. But her eyes never lost their warmth. She wrote journals about their travels, about the wonders they saw and the friends they made. Those journals became required reading for every xenobiologist in known space. They taught people that the universe was bigger and stranger and more beautiful than anyone had imagined. When Elena finally passed, peaceful and old and surrounded by love, Orion carried her body to the heart of a dying star. He sang to her as she burned. The songs were in a language older than the universe itself. Then he went to Earth. He found a hospital, a pediatric ward. Children who were sick and scared and could not sleep. Orion made himself small again. House-cat-sized, just like he had been when he hatched. He curled up on their beds, one by one. He stayed with them through their darkest nights. He purred and chirped and let them hold on to him. The nurses did not understand at first. They did not know why this small dark creature with galaxy eyes had appeared. But the children slept better when he was there. They smiled more. They healed faster, because a human had taught him that this was what you did. You stayed with the ones who needed you. You kept them warm. You helped them feel safe. In the centuries that followed, void dragons began seeking out humans more and more often. The bonds that had been impossible became common. Scientists tried to explain it. They wrote papers and theories and models. The humans just shrugged. We're good with pets, they said. The dragons laughed. It was a sound like colliding galaxies. They let the humans believe it was that simple, but they knew the truth. They had always known the truth. Humans were not special because they were strong or smart or powerful. They were special because they knew how to love things that were different from them. They saw a cold egg in a frozen cave and chose to keep it warm. They saw a dying hatchling and chose to stay. They saw loneliness and answered it with connection. That was what humans were. That was why the dragons had chosen them. And somewhere out there, among the stars, Elena Vasquez smiled. She had always known.